Council, very good. Thanks everybody for joining us this evening for the West Richland City Council meeting Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. I will call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. Before we get started, I'll ask Stephanie to read our virtual meeting ground rules, and then you go ahead and call the roll, Stephanie.
All right. Please make sure the name shown at the bottom of your video view is the name you would like the facilitator to use. You can change this by right-clicking on the three dots in the upper corner of your video view and clicking Rename. You can choose to leave this as the name for all upcoming meetings or just this one instance. If you have an unstable internet connection, please also connect through the phone. That will allow you to continue to participate even if you lose internet connection. If you call in after you have joined on video, click the arrow between mute and video, and there is a button for switch to phone audio. Clicking this button provides a participant ID. Please call in with that ID, as then your phone is associated with your video. Everyone will be muted until a public hearing, and when the chair calls the public hearing to order, if you raise your hand, the chair will call on you and you will be unmuted. To virtually raise your hand, click on participants and then click on raise hand. If you are participating by phone only, press *9 to raise your hand. All right, Brent Geary.
Here.
Richard Bloom.
Here.
Fred Brink.
Here.
Gail Brown.
Here.
David Fetto.
Here.
Kate Moran.
Present.
John Smart.
Here.
And Councilmember Buell is out of town for, I believe, this month.
We have a motion to excuse Councilmember Buell from this evening's meeting.
So
Moved. Second.
You got that, Stephanie?
I think so.
Okay, that was a John and Gail. Perfect. And a tag team with Kate. So we're good. All right, thank you. And I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I will give Stephanie the opportunity to mute everybody, and then
We need to vote on that still.
Oh, my bad. May I have a motion or all in favor, say aye for excusing Councilman Buell.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you, council. And with that, we'll move on to the pledge. So Stephanie will mute everybody. I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Council, your agenda is before you this evening. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the agenda as presented. Second.
I have a motion and a second from council member. Where'd he go? There he is, Fetto. Everybody moved around after we came back live again, so. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign, please. Motion carried. Thank you, council. We do not have any new presentations this evening. And the consent agenda, which is multiple items taken by one motion, which include approved minutes of the regular meeting, February 16th, 2021, and workshop February 23rd, 2021. The resolution 0921 approving the Heights of Red Mountain Phase 2 security agreement. The motion to approve the Heights of Red Mountain Phase 2 final plat. If there's anyone from the audience who would like to speak to the consent agenda this evening, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. You'll be recognized. I see no one. Stephanie, do you?
I do not.
All right, thank you. Council, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda this evening, please?
Mr.
I
Mayor,
move to approve the consent agenda, Mr. Mayor.
I second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, please. Motion carried unanimous. Thank you, council. Moving on to ordinances, resolutions, motions, and public hearing. 7A and B are a public hearing and an ordinance adopting the interim development regulations for transmission lines. I'd like to ask Eric Mendenhall, Community Development Director, to present a staff report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, before you this evening is an interim development regulation that staff felt was important to bring to your attention that addresses transmission lines. It was brought to our attention that BPA has the intention to install a transmission line on the northern part of town out on the ranch. And we wanted to be able to have some input as far as how those how that infrastructure is designed and located. So we are proposing, staff's proposing, that there be regulations implemented that would create a definition for transmission line, which is 69,000 volts or more. And to allow this use in all zones as a conditional use and develop standards for said lines. Staff has taken this proposal to the CD subcommittee and received a due pass recommendation from the subcommittee. This interim development regulation, we would bring back again later this month with some findings of fact for council to review and approve, and then be able to, this would allow a pause on this kind, well, not a pause, it's going to create standards specifically for these in the interim. So if BPA wanted to move forward, they could come in and apply and get their application started, but it also would allow for public process and a public hearing and the public to be involved and be able to have their input on this over the next several months as it goes through the standard protocol for code amendments. So with that, staff is recommending that council go ahead and approve the proposal before you this evening, and happy to respond to any questions or clarification you may have.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. And with that, I will go ahead and open the public hearing at 6:10. And if you would like to provide comments on this agenda item this evening, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone and clerk will unmute you for your comments. Stephanie, I do not see anyone from the audience for public comment. Do you?
I do not.
Seeing no one, I close the public hearing at 6:10. And ordinance 0821 interim development regulation transmission line standards. If I could have a motion, please. After a motion, we can have the discussion amongst
I
yourselves.
move to adopt ordinance number some 21 interim development regulation that amends the definitions for minor utilities, created a new definition for transmission lines, established development and performance standards for transmission lines, set transmission lines as a conditional use in all districts, and amend the West Virginia Municipal Code. I second that.
A motion and a second. Thank you, council. And Gail, I see you have your hand up.
Well, actually, Eric brought it up. Will this delay their project?
It would not delay their project. They would be able to come in and apply for a conditional use permit and go through that now. If council approves this, they would just have that public process that would be included. So all of the neighboring property owners to their proposed line would be informed of the action and be able to have the ability to know what's going on and where it's located and how it looks, and all the information that you'd hope to have for something like that to be installed in your backyard or in your neighborhood.
That answer your question, Gail? You're muted.
It wouldn't delay them. They would just have that, they'd have
That
the
transmission line, and it doesn't have anything as far as those underlying that we're doing across the street there. That won't affect any of that either.
distribution lines aren't impacted.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Brink.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just make one comment. I think that implementing the public process and the opportunity for comment is extremely important. So I support this initiative.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilmember Bloom.
My question is this the first time we've had transmission lines of this voltage in town?
No, there's existing 8 structures that you'll see just following from Ledbetter all the way out to the ranch and beyond. So we already have these lines in town. It's any new transmission lines that they construct. We want to make sure that we have some ability to notify the public and have a public process for that. And then also to be able to have some input to their design and location.
So the substation and the lines going to it on bombing range, is that the yeah, I think they're in the neighborhood enterprise neighborhood park. Are those within this criteria?
Well, those are existing, so they wouldn't need to come in and get a permit.
Right, but would they require, I mean, they're H type of
Right.
lines, would they require a permit if they were to be replaced?
Then if they were to replace those or have any structural change to them, then we would ask them to do the monopole for the code. If that's what is adopted and it continues after all this process that we go through.
Does that answer your question, Councilman Bloom? Very good.
Okay.
Very, Councilmember Smart.
Yeah, Eric and council, thanks for the opportunity to comment, and I do like the process with the public involvement. I still had the concern about the color of the monopoles. This statement, and that was my comment during our subcommittee meeting. I just wanted to bring that out. But this code asks that the color of the transmission line structure shall be a rust color or similar. And my comment on that I wanted to pass along to council was that I'm not convinced that's the right color for our environment at these lower elevations in our desert environment. I'm suggesting to consider the light navy gray instead of the dark rust color for the poles. Otherwise, Eric showed us pictures of the what the transmission line corridors might look like along the roads, and with grass boundaries and so forth. And I just have to say that I really like that. It looked very nice, and it's a good way to go about installing these, or so it would seem to me. But I did want to make a comment on the color of the poles. I think the dark poles might stand out more than the light colored ones. And I use flat top towers as an example, and also some of the towers in Richland along Stevens Drive. So I just want council to consider that possible change. And I don't know, would this be the time to change that, Eric, or would that be something we would do later?
You could make a motion now to change that and have that amended, or it could be, as we go through the process, that's something that could be discussed and fleshed out over the process that we're going to be going through with this.
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, it seems like, I mean, there's only one location we're thinking about right now where these would go in, is my understanding. But there'll obviously be others perhaps in the future. And maybe it should be more site specific. But so that's my only concern about this particular ordinance, the way it's written, is just that color declaration.
I believe that would be something that probably be something we can have a discussion later on. This is early in the process. It's not anything that we need to set in stone here this evening. maybe go find some transmission lines and drive around and look at different colors, look at backgrounds, things of that nature, you know, so
Yep.
there's other things that we can do in this process, but note well taken, Eric, if you would follow up on that particular comment, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bloom, is your hand still up or is that the old one?
That's the old one.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anybody else tonight? All righty. Seeing no one, then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, council. And 7C is an authorization request by staff to submit a Rural County Capital Fund project application to Benton County. And with that, I will ask Roscoe if he'd please present his staff report this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. So council, what you have before you, I'm going to give you a little background history of the RCCF funds. It's included in your council packet, but for the listeners, back in January of 2017, the Benton County Commissioners established a disbursement policy associated with these rural county capital funds. And they can only be used for qualifying economic development capital projects. If you recall, this was the Benton County jail facility. They passed a sales tax thing. And in that resolution, once the bonds paid off, those funds would continue to grow and be used for economic development purposes. The disbursement policy calls out how that's distributed between the local agencies. And again, the county holds the money and we have to apply for that and receive their approval. The program, the funds will continue to grow through June 30th of 2023. Agencies are required to expend it by June 30th of 2026, or those are funds that are left are subject to surrender to Benton County. Our current balance as of the end of January was $1,268,000 and some change. If you look at last year's growth, the fund was growing at about just under $38,000 per month. It's a little lower than it was pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, I think we're closer to 40, a little bit over. And so basically what we're looking at is by the end of June of 2023, there should be $2.4 million in that fund for capital projects. Council directed staff to put together some projects to be considered. I worked with Eric Mendenhall on the community development side to come up with some projects, and I'll show you the slides. We've got 4 projects that we think have merit that we want to go forward with. At this time, we're asking to only apply for the first 3 that deal with water and sewer along Van Giesen. And the 4th one we're proposing to hold off, which is some water line down Keene between TLAC to the police station. And we'll get into that when we go, but I'm going to go ahead and share this. Can you see the rural county? Does that come up okay?
Yep, we got it, Roscoe.
Thank you.
Yep.
So the first one deals with water line on Van Giesen, and these are associated with the SR 224 Red Mountain Transportation Improvement Project. That $26 million project is going to widen Keene Road, basically from the post office all the way across the front of the raceway. But there's infrastructure under there that needs to go in before that the state widens that roadway.
And that's Van Giesen, Roscoe speaking to, not Keene.
Thank you. So Van Giesen. So this, what you're looking at, this piece is the water line gaps. And so you can see by the mobile home park, the water line's already there, but these symbols here are fire hydrants. You can see there's a gap between Rupert and just north of Paradise, and another gap between Paradise and Keene that we're looking at. Hopefully you can see that. This portion is a little over just under $1.3 million to design and construct. Oops, excuse me. The next piece has to do, it's pretty much the same section, again, between Rupert and Keene Road on Van Giesen. There's a large sewer interceptor that runs along the northwest side of Van Giesen. And so the majority of this work deals with putting some manholes and stubbing mains out to the adjacent property. A lot of this property is zoned CLI, commercial, multifamily, and it'll also provide sewer to existing homes that are currently on septic. This one's about $280,000, so it's a little bit smaller. Again, the majority of the backbone of the sewer is already in that location. And the third piece is basically extension of the Van Giesen water line. We're already extending the water main from Keene along Van Giesen for the police station. What this would do, it would continue that extension to the entrance to the racetrack, and then follow that access road to the back behind the racetrack, where there's some about 18 to 20 acres of vacant commercial light industrial property. And the idea is that would provide potable water to the back portion of the racetrack facility. This piece is just under 300,000 for the design and construction costs. And the fourth one that we looked at and was the water line extension that basically comes from the backside of the police station. So that water lines currently with the police station is getting extended to the east end of it, so that we're not tearing up that new parking lot, but would extend it up along Keene Road and tie into the existing water at TLAC. That was extended basically from Belmont that direction when TLAC was built. This piece is about $600,000. I'm going to stop sharing screen and
Is that all of your presentation?
no, sorry, I'm just going to get it off the thing. So
Okay,
that,
perfect. All right, continue on, sir. Thank you.
sorry.
No, you're good.
So what we were staff was proposing was to do those first three, which is the water and sewer associated with Van Giesen, including the extension to the industrial land at the backside of the raceway. Total cost of that, which we're considering a phase one, was $1,862,000. And the proposed funding for that would be $1,318,000 from the rural county capital funds, $265,000 from the 441 water fund, and $279,000 from the 442 sewer fund. The reason for the delay and not doing it all at this time, the county, well, it's twofold. The county will only let you obligate funds that are already in your bank. And so this thing will continue to grow through June of 2023. But more importantly, staff feels that there may be an opportunity that comes up between now and 2023. And so the proposal is let's hold off and reevaluate this in 2023. It should be about $1 million left, and do the same evaluation and look at it and see if that fourth project we've shown is the right one, or if something else has come up, and kind of go through the same process. We did meet with the utility committee to discuss these projects and kind of the approach that staff was taking. We were looking at good discussion on where else is there potential to promote economic development. The discussion was, could we do some frontage improvements here at Belmont in the front of the city on Keene? And we've already got some sales going on that are required to do those improvements. There was some discussion about the existing Van Giesen through the old part of town or downtown area. And we talked about that we had previously done all of this exact same thing with these water and sewer improvements before the state had overlaid that previously. And so, and then we talked about the ranch, but most of their commercial industrial land, the developers extended those facilities there. So basically the utility committee was unanimous on recommending what we're calling the phase one projects to be submitted to Benton County for consideration. You see the tentative schedule there. The last projects have taken almost up to a year to get approved by the county. And the importance of this would be to get it submitted, approved, so we can get it designed and constructed before the state came through and did the roadway improvements in 2024, 2025. So with that, Mayor, that ends my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Appreciate it. Is there anyone from the audience who would like to comment on this agenda item this evening? If so, go ahead and please raise your virtual hand or *9 if by phone, and we will be recognized. I see no one. Stephanie, do you see anybody?
I do not.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And then council, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize staff to submit an application for Phase 1 projects for use of rural county capital funds with Benton County.
A second.
Motion and a second by Councilman Smart. And council questions, I see comments. Kate, you have your hand up?
I do, yes, thank you. I am wondering, and I apologize if you've already told us ahead of time, Roscoe. I'm wondering, what exactly is the rate of interest for our RCCF available fund based on? Did you tell us that already?
I'm sorry, Kate.
Oh, is my microphone not up?
No, mine, it's on my end. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm wondering, did you already tell us what the rate of interest on our RCCF available fund is based on? And if not, what is it? And if you
Okay,
did,
so
I need
so
to
the
know anyway.
no, it's okay. I'm not aware that it's collecting any interest.
Okay,
I think the way the disbursement agreement was set up, and Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the county's keeping the interest.
Yeah,
Whatever
any
that-
interest rates that are being that are compounded on all of the RCCF funds are being held by the county for the administrations of the RCCF funds through to all the municipalities and ports.
got it. Okay, so then the reason why the amount is going up is because it's just how much tax is being
Collected, that's correct.
collected? Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
And like I said, the 37,000 was based on the last 12 months through the COVID pandemic. So I used that going forward, thinking it was a conservative amount.
Is there anything that you could see that would be majorly affecting that? Like either making it much lower?
It's all based off of the retail sales tax percentage that's being brought in. So if you have a decline or a crash in the, like we had in 08, that could have an effect on it. But even at COVID, it's still coming in higher than what they had anticipated. So, that's the more people are spending, even if it's coming, if Amazon at home is our retail sales tax from all the cities hasn't seen a huge hit. So that's about all I can do to answer that question.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councilmember Bloom.
Yes, I turned my hand down this time. Roscoe, why are we for proposal? I gotta make sure. Why are we wrapping the water line around the racetrack? I mean, we just access that property in the back. Why aren't we coming down the, I'll call it the east side of the racetrack where the property that we're keeping is?
Let me pull that up, Councilman Bloom. Good question.
I mean, we're extending a line from TLAC.
So you're asking, why don't we come the other way, this way around, rather than that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see in the future is when we were doing modeling and looking at this, the required fire flow is if we have a major industrial back here or to that property to the south at CLI, this would actually need to be extended further to the east and loop back up to Keene Road. And so that was part of the discussion, that we'd probably need to loop it and do both in the future. And if
Right.
that turns,
That was my point of the loop. Are we just trying to spend the money? Is that why?
no, this would gets the water to that back property. it makes it available for the racetrack. And if the Alexanders, if our land swap goes through and before May, it provides future water for that to develop to the south.
Okay, but that was the reason we weren't keeping that property. You know, one of the reasons we accessed it, because it didn't have water and ideally sewer. So I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, it didn't, you're
property
right.
We're keeping, or the property we're keeping, we're not running the water to.
We are, that parcel actually is large. It goes to the water line that's already stubbed through the police station parking lot. We'll hit the northern spot of this 20-acre piece. So the water, this lot here is 20 acres and backs right up to the police station. So that water line with the police station is going to come through and serve this part of that lot. This would serve the southern portion of this same 20-acre parcel.
And depending on what the developer is, he might end up making the loop.
Depending on really what the use is and what the fire flow requirements are.
I'm just concerned that we're putting in a very large dead end with a low water use.
Right now, that's correct.
You also have to take a look at, Mr. Bloom, of what the potential's coming with the high school, the other roads that are going to be back behind there, and where that infrastructure all plays in a tie into this to continue the loop even further to the south of Keene Road.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing screen. So let me just.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that came up, Mayor and Richard, was the idea of getting a start on that loop that would complete back up around by Keene.
Oh, so all south of Keene, well, whatever. Since the picture you put up there has sort of north at a 45-degree angle. So it's all right. I understand. So rather than just circle the racetrack, you want to bring it all the way back up.
Yeah, and if we could, if Mr. Councilman Bloom, if we could ask the subcommittee that had this discussion to weigh in on it a little bit more, which would be, I believe, Councilman Spark, Councilman Brink. Go ahead and do so, and then I'll go ahead and recognize Councilmember Brown. So John or Fred?
Yeah, well, I gave you my 2 cents. That really, I think that may have been one of my suggestions, was to bring that a little further, just because it was an easy stretch. I think the additional cost for that between the racetrack and the end of the line was fairly low cost, and it just got us a little further down the road for that loop. It also really helps justify that entire course off of Van Giesen. Otherwise, we're bringing it in just for the racetrack.
And Mr. Mayor, I'll add my comments. It was actually Councilmember Smart that made the suggestion. And both myself and Councilmember Buell thought it was excellent for the reasons that Councilmember Smart just stated. Very little additional cost associated with doing this. And it does provide water to that vacant CLI property looking toward the future. So I think the three of us were unanimous in our thoughts that this was a good addition for that part 3 of the phase 1 project.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. With that, Councilmember Brown.
I kind of agree with Mr. Bloom, but what my question was on once we get that over, about what percentage of this money comes back to water and sewer with the connection fees?
So Gail, you're asking what are our connection fees? It depends on what the.
Typically, what would you see coming back as a percentage? I'm sure you're not getting it all back. But
I didn't do the calculation on it, Gail, but this is commercial light industrial, so larger meter. The connection charges are based on the size of the service and what the use, but I did not go through and do the calculation or look at what the return would be.
well, not just that property, but the other property down there on Van Giesen where you're putting it across.
Yeah, I didn't run the calculation, Gail, but
Okay,
I
thanks.
can look into it and see, but I didn't run the calculation. We just simply looked at where we needed to stub the sewer across to serve those existing homes and vacant property, so we didn't cut the road in the future to get to the interceptor.
Okay,
That was one of the main drivers for this project, right? Was that if we get this water work done, sewer and water work done now, when the Van Giesen is paved, we don't have to go back and cut it up in order to do this work. So that's obviously a pretty, that's a basic premise on road development that we want to try to maintain, I would think.
And Gail, Councilman Brown, that some of those properties are large, and I know some of the zoning has changed recently from on the northern side of that corridor where they were 5-acre lots that had a single manufactured home on that, you know, have gone through the process to change the comp plan and zoning that are now commercial. And so if something like that changes in the future, or if obviously the lots are large, it could be subdivided, the infrastructure is there to support it again without having to cut the road. So.
Very good. Any more comments, council?
Yeah, so Roscoe, I actually have a question. I hope this doesn't throw any wrenches into the works, but I do have to bring it up because I thought about it. How will this impact any of our residents who are currently on septic system? Are they going to see an expense are they going to be forced to hook up to the sewer because it's now closer to their home, or is that only if they end up with septic work in the future?
Yes. So if you look at the strict thing of our municipal code, it deals with this deal, but we're not looking to force anybody to connect.
Okay.
What it will do is if in the future they have an issue with their septic tank, it'll be there for them to connect. And then there will be a cost associated at that time. But no, I'm not looking to go force somebody that has a septic system that's working fine to make them connect. The only thing that really triggers that is if they become a developer and decide they want to start subdividing their property, then the existing house would be required to hook up to the sewer, and the new lots created would be required to have stub outs at that point. But existing homes, we're not out there to, if it works, it's working. Don't need to push it.
Good. Good. Thank you for that. I wanted to make sure that was clear.
Good question.
And when you get sewer up on 54th, well, let me know because I'm ready to switch over anytime. All right.
Councilmember Moran.
Yes, thank you. What Councilmember Smart was saying actually made me think of something else is, okay, so you say they're not going to be forced to unless they subdivide or unless they need to get sewer because they have issues with their septic. Will they have the option to opt in and pay? Like I know for myself and at least a couple of my neighbors, we had that option when sewer was put in just south of the street from us. Will that also be given to folks that live near where this sewer will be put in?
So you want to know when we're doing the stub across if they can connect during that time?
If they would be given the option to pay to be stubbed in, yes.
We can look into that, Kate. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, it's probably, some of them, unless they're right next to it, would be able to connect very easily. Others would need additional extensions at their expense.
Right.
But we can check into that. It's a good idea. We can make a note of it to approach them and just say it's an option.
Sure. I know that sometimes just because construction, it seems like it never really, the construction cost never really goes down with time. It only goes up. It might be better if they know that they're going to be doing something in the future to buy in then rather than wait until it costs more and buy in later. So I just wanted to see if that.
Excellent point. Yeah, we'll follow up with that and make sure we get to that point. We'll give them that option to consider it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no more hands up. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, please. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, council. We're going to move on to 7D, is a proposed 2021, 2026 six-year transportation improvement amendment proposal. Public hearing and a discussion was held on February 2nd for this item proposed. It was postponed until tonight's meeting. And with that, Roscoe had a number of questions and some more research council had requested him to look into. So with that big drink of water there, he's ready to go ahead and his findings. So staff report, please, Roscoe.
Thank you, Mayor. So council, I got a pretty thick packet. I tried to include everything so you wouldn't have to go back and try to find things. So just gonna reference what's in the packet and then we'll walk through. So you've got the original presentation that JUB did to council back on January 19th. You've got the resolution that would amend the 6-year transportation improvement. And again, we're amending it from a roundabout to a signal. So at the end of the day, when we're discussing that, if it's not the signal option we're looking at, there's no reason to amend the STIP. You've got JB's PowerPoint. I talked about that. You've got some exhibits that were included, and I'm going to pull those up so that people at home can see those. Engineers' estimates, some collision data, and responses to Councilmember Bloom's questions. And then I included public comments that were received through our eGov system and or our city clerk, or that were to me in your packet, as long as they were received by I want to say last Tuesday. We've since received a few more this evening, and I will touch on those. Some of them came in 5 minutes before the meeting. So I'll try to touch on them and make sure, just in case they're not here at the meeting. We usually typically have a deadline at 3, but we'll try to accommodate it best we can. So again, we had the presentation by JB back in January, discussed the options, looking like we wanted to move forward with the signal. Had a little more discussion on February 2nd, and a whole bunch of questions came up. Council basically, I think, continued it to this tonight to allow me some more time to go back to the consultant and come back with some more information. And so I'm going to walk through this with you. This also, since there was a lot of information and I had the opportunity, I did take this through the utility committee to let them review it twofold, make sure I answered what was requested or the questions, make sure we had all the information. And then 2, just have a discussion and a good dialogue. And so with that, let me, the other thing that was asked, so I'll get into the additional information. One of the things was asked about was the budget for this. And if you recall, this project only has money for PE, the design, and the right-of-way and environmental. And so it's $275,000. And out of that, $237,000 and some change is a federal grant. So that was the budget that we've started with when we started out with this. So I'm going to walk through some information. I think it's going to be easier if I pull up the exhibits. So bear with me. Did that show up? You guys see the?
Yes, you got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is exhibit A1. So if you recall, this is the original double lane roundabout exhibit that was presented by JEB back in January on the 19th. They kind of talked about that 20 years ago, the plan was to expand the roundabout inward with the second lane, but things change over 20 years. And so the need was new design standards are to expand outwards. If you recall, the total cost, well, I included the engineer's estimate. So we had the engineers go through. So this option A1 is $4,061,000. That includes the PE right away, construction engineering, and the engineering contract. That makes up, again, we're looking at just the PE and right away, and some notes that I included with it. This includes that property in the southwest corner as being a full take. It has impacts to East Latin Road. We have existing issues. Double lane roundabout would make that worse. Don't think it makes it a full right in, right out, but it's difficult now for northbound traffic to meander over with the other lane and make that right turn. This would make it worse. And notably on budget, it would require an additional $900,000 to complete the PE and right of way, meaning our $275,000 budget would not be sufficient. And the big cost there is the right of way, the full take on that property in the southwest corner. This exhibit, which is A1.1, this is what council asked, was to look at shifting the roundabout, double lane roundabout, to the northeast with the purpose of eliminating the full take on that property in the southwest corner. You can see the cost of this one that was provided in your council packet is $4,430,000. Again, that's PE right away, construction, engineering, and contract. While it lessens the impact to the southwest corner, it impacts more to the northeast corner, which is commercially zoned property, which increases our right-of-way cost. That property is more expensive. This does make East Latin basically a right in, right out. So if you are, I guess if you're coming southbound on Bombing Range, you could make a left into East Latin. But if you were any other direction other than taking the shoe fly lane coming from Richland, you wouldn't be able to make a right turn into East Latin. It would eliminate that. And this one, if you look at just the PE and right away, would require about $517,000 additional funds just to complete that portion of it. The next one is my middle of the night. This wasn't asked by council, but this is one in the middle of the night that that I was trying to, if we're going to look at taking a piece of the southwest corner rather than just a little bit, if it's a full take, it's full take. Let's look at moving the roundabout south to mitigate the East Latin conflict. And this one actually has the best geometrics for a double lane roundabout. The cost is a little over 4.5 million. Again, the right of way in that southwest corner is a full take. It has impacts to the property just to the west of the southwest corner. You can see how it really gets close to that driveway. So there'll be some design issues to deal with that. Again, it corrects the issue we currently have at East Latin and would take an additional $848,000 to complete the PE and right-of-way portions. The last one was the original signal, where you're getting additional left turn lanes, right turn lanes. The cost of this is $3,864,000. Again, that's complete PE, design, right away, and construction. Has the least impact to the abutting property owners. It corrects the access to East Latin. We don't have that movement, the in and out movement, and would require an additional $151,000 to complete the PE and right away. So I'm going to stop sharing this one. I'm going to pull up well, I think I can just, let me see. Did the collision data, did that pop up?
No, not yet.
Okay, let me, I'm going to stop sharing and pull up a different screen here. Well, hang on a sec, apologize.
No problem.
Went to hit minimize and I actually closed it, so. All right. Did that show up now?
Yes, you got it.
Okay, so one of the things that council asked about was some collision data. There's all sorts of national data that you can find out there on single lane roundabouts, double lane roundabouts, signals. What I tasked JEB to do was to look at local intersections. And I was very specific. I said, I want to see what the accidents are at our existing single lane roundabout. And so that's what your first column is. You can see the summary of accident, whether there was a fatality, serious, injury, property damage only, and then you see the ratios down below. And I was a little surprised when they provided the data that there was a fatality. I had to actually confirm that with our West Michigan Police Department, that there was a fatality, but I wanted to caveat it with it had to do with a medical condition, not so much the roundabout itself. So that's why you see the footnote there. But the other thing is I then looked at Clearwater and Leslie over in Kennewick. You can see it's got a similar traffic. And again, these traffic counts are from 2018. As a region, we do traffic counts every 2 years, and traffic counts were done in 2020 because of COVID. So the best data I've got is 2018 data. But we looked at a double lane roundabout, and you can see there, traffic pattern currently is very similar to the amount of traffic we had at our intersection. And you can see the accident ratios down below. And then we looked at some signals that would be similar over in Kennewick at 10th and Kellogg, 27th and Ely over in Kennewick. Again, we were looking for similar traffic and to look at the accidents that they were seeing on a local level. And then your far right column was at build out. At build out, we expect to be 35,000 to 40,000 vehicles at this intersection. And so we looked for one that was a signal was similar. And so that's the Leslie gauge. And you can see the ratio there, kind of a deal. Again, this is local data. There's all sorts of national studies. You've asked for some traffic data. This is the best I could come up with local. It shows, when you look at a double lane roundabout compared to these signals, the signals got lesser, but you see a few accidents that deal with injuries, a lot more property, which is on a general rule of thumb, accidents in roundabouts or more property damage, they're not as severe. I mean, no one's trying to just discount that with vehicle. I'm going to stop sharing this one. The other things that were asked about was additional information on the potential impacts to East Latin Road. Staff was specifically asked about the number and locations of access points into the lakes area. So you can see in the staff report that currently there's 4 locations to serve the 310 current homes. There are a number of large lots in that neighborhood that still can be subdivided and additional homes. Currently, there's basically 2 outlets in the northwest, which is 38th and out North Lake out to Bombing Range. You got and then Fire Mountain out in the southeast to Kennedy, and then you got currently East Latin. The other thing that was brought up at our February 2nd was the impact to that property owner at the southwest corner. There was a number of people that were speaking for that property owner. So I took the liberty of contacting the owner to see if they were interested in meeting and going over the options. And you can see, I met with Miss Mason on February 19th. Just so everybody has the background, she's lived there since 1994. She remembers meeting with me 20 years ago with her late husband when we did the first roundabout. And I'm sorry Councilman Buell isn't here because he would have got a kick out of it. She remembers him fighting for the block walls on Keene Road 20 years ago. So I went over the options with her and the impacts and asked her opinion with it. And she was very blunt as a 80-plus-year-old widow. She had no intentions of moving. She wasn't ready to go to, an old folks home, in her words. I asked, what about a condo in Hawaii? She wasn't interested in that. She's got a beautiful manicured backyard, family in town, and she plans to be there for probably another 20 years. Very spunky lady, but had no interest in that. And her final thing was to me that if we have a viable option that doesn't include taking her home, then she'd prefer that to be the option. So that's from Miss Mason. Public comments. So again, when I did the staff report last week, we'd received 13 public comments total. That included the 5 from the last public meeting. So we received another 8 additional. Some of them were very brief. I think you can go through. A lot of them say they prefer the roundabout compared to a signal. What's not clear is, are they speaking, comparing a double lane roundabout to a signal? That's not, some of them are hard. A few of them don't think we need to do anything, that there's not an issue at the roundabout. We did receive, since the staff report was sent out, an additional 7 emails that came through. Some of them that came before 3. I think Stephanie's going to read one that has to be read into the record. So we'll do that at the end of my presentation, or we'll do it during the public comment, excuse me. Is that correct, Stephanie? We'll do it. Okay. And so out of the 7 we received today, very similar comments that they favor the roundabout. Some question the need to do anything. And one of them was very concerned with the issue with the access to East Latin, the current problem with navigating to get in over to access East Latin. So, but they were all very consistent. So total of 20 public comments that were received. Other clarifying information. So regardless of which option council selects, the posted speed limit on Keene Road corridor between Kennedy and Van Giesen will be further evaluated and revised at the time the intersection modifications are constructed. So that was something that JB mentioned to me after the last meeting, that the plan is right now, if you look at Keene Road, we've got 35, we got 45. We're already in discussions with Richland on how do you put a consistent speed down that corridor that meets all the needs. And so we're looking at 40 miles an hour consistent through that corridor. And that's what, regardless if it's a roundabout or a signal, the speed limit we're looking at when that intersection improvement occurs, we would look at making it all 40 at that time. Again, don't hold me to it, but that's what the analysis looks like today. We will do further analysis at that time with construction. The other thing, there was some comments about possible noise or concerns with homes that are there right there at the intersection. And my staff reminded me that we've got an internal policy that when we go to 4 lanes, we're putting up the 6-foot block walls. So the issue with the noise, especially with that southwest corner property, would have a 6-foot block wall. And I did mention that to Miss Mason. She didn't think the noise was an issue. I think the comment received was to signal people stop. When it turns green, they accelerate. She says, obviously, they haven't been at the roundabout. People have to stop at the roundabout to let people go around. And then when they get their little gap, they gun it. So she didn't see a change in it, but was very appreciative that we were going to, whichever option goes, that we go to 4 lanes, we do the 6-foot block wall along the resident and continue what we've done east of this intersection. Councilmember Bloom had a lot of technical questions, wanted to look at the traffic studies, information, things considered, questions. I won't go through all that, but all that information was provided to Councilman Bloom and also provided out to council to look at. Those responses came from JUB, the consultant. Again, the financial impacts of tonight, regardless which option you select, we're looking at needing additional money to complete the P and design. That's anywhere from 151,000 to 900,000. Again, this went to utility committee to review and consider all this information. Staff's recommendation has not changed. You know, we look at capacity needs. The current intersection has a level of service E in the PM peak. You're not seeing it as bad as it is because of COVID right now, but that will change. Growth is continuing, and so there is a need to do an expansion. Again, whether it's the signal or the double lane roundabout, both options will be able to meet the 20-year demand. Flexibility was considered. Again, the signal gives you more flexibility in the future as if and when traffic patterns change. The signal doesn't involve relocation or buying somebody out. The only one that's viable with the double lane roundabout is moving to the south. So you're not impacting East Latin Road. And given my discussion with Ms. Mason, you know, you could be looking at condemnation. She's not a willing seller at this time. I've been working for the city over 20 years, and my direction has always been avoid takes at all costs. We've never had to condemn or take somebody's property against their will. And that's why that price is so expensive. You know, sorry, Bronson, but condemnation, the only ones that really win in that thing are the attorneys. It's very expensive, time consuming. And when you're dealing with a federal project, that is not a fun process for either the resident or the city staff to go through. Cost, again, is always an option. We always look, it's something that we consider. Safety, we look at that. A lot of the comments really focused on vehicular accidents. Again, you've got an intersection that has a regional pathway on the north side. I looked for data for a double lane roundabout and pedestrians. I couldn't find anything, even with DOT. But I think that was discussed in the last one. You know, it's difficult to cross 3 lanes. It's going to be even more difficult with 5 lanes. Flashing yellow lights and all that stuff helps, but that's still not a perfect solution. And again, whatever option, we need to make sure that we're mitigating impacts to East Latin. But based on all that, my recommendation is still the signal, hasn't changed. And that was also the recommendation of the utility committee. It was unanimous to come forward with a signal. So with that, I'll stop there, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Appreciate your hard work and JUB's extra work on top of everything else that we've done. Before I open the opportunity for the audience to comment, I'll ask Stephanie to read into the record one item Roscoe had mentioned.
So I did receive a written comment from Lisa Nelson. I am again weighing in to express my strong opposition to the traffic light proposed at the intersection of Keene and Bombing Range. Let us review some facts put forth by the Washington State Department of Transportation. Roundabouts reduced injury crashes by 75% at intersections where stop signs or signals were previously used for traffic control. According to a study by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, studies by the IIHS and Federal Highway Administration have shown that roundabouts typically achieve a 37% reduction in overall collisions, a 75% reduction in injury collisions, a 90% reduction in fatality collisions, a 40% reduction in pedestrian collisions. Additional studies by the IIHS of intersections in 3 states, including Washington, found that roundabouts contributed to an 89% reduction in delays and a 56% reduction in vehicle stops. 89%. Let us turn this around and ask ourselves, if we go backwards and convert this intersection into a traffic signal, can we expect an 89% increase in delays? Your constituents will not see this as progress. Roundabouts are also more effective during power outages. We all witnessed the recent disaster in Texas where thousands were without power for days. Unlike traditional signaled intersections, which must be treated as a 4-way stop or require police to direct traffic when a loss of power occurs, roundabouts would continue to work like normal with no interventions. Let's talk about cost. The cost difference between building a roundabout and a traffic signal is normally quite comparable. I realize that we are looking at a higher upfront cost in this particular location. However, when long-term costs are considered, roundabouts eliminate hardware, maintenance, and electrical costs associated with traffic signals, which can cost between $5,000 and $10,000 per year. I have been discussing this with neighbors and community members since I became aware of the leanings of the council. I have not encountered one resident that would prefer traffic light, even when presented with the challenges of acquiring the various parcels needed. Dear council, the facts speak for themselves. Let us choose long-term good over short-term convenience.
Thank you, Stephanie. And with that, I would offer up anyone from the audience who'd like to comment on this item this evening to please raise your hand or *9 if it's by phone. And Stephanie will recognize you and unmute you. If you have made comment in the previous public hearing, do take that into consideration with your comments this evening. Stephanie, do you see anything?
I do not. And just to remind the public, in order to raise your virtual hand, down at the bottom of your Zoom viewing, there is an icon that says raise hand, or you can accomplish it over, I believe, in the participant screen as well.
Thank you for that clarification, Stephanie. Do you see anyone now, Stephanie?
I do not.
Okay. With that, council, may I ask for a motion? We did have a motion that was revised to table this, so we will need another motion to continue.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt Resolution 05-21, amending the city's 2021 to 2026 six-year transportation improvement program.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, any questions of Mr. Slade or conversations amongst yourself? Go ahead and please raise your hands. Councilman Bloom?
Well, just I want to appreciate the amount of information was given to me. It was a little bit, I think if I had the original JUV study that we had a month ago, I got most of my information out of that. The facts are that a single lane roundabout maxes out at about 1,200 cars per hour. And looking at the numbers, it looks to me like one of the major reasons we're being forced to take, with option the south, moving the circle to the south. The reason we're required to do a complete take is the fly lane from Keene to Bombing Range towards Dallas Road. But the numbers that were provided as far as traffic wouldn't necessarily necessitate that lane. It was 200, estimated as being 200 cars per hour taking the right lane, which could, in turn enter the circle and go out the right exit, which could mitigate, at least for the short term, the need to take that property. But overall, the roundabout would only accommodate, if it was optimal, 2,400 cars per hour, and that's approximately what they say that's with no conflicts, which is back what my proposal of putting traffic lights in would eliminate the conflicts in the roundabout. So the roundabout is basically somewhat doomed, but I believe so is the traffic light. When I went up and looked at the intersection of Keene and Steptoe, McGage and Steptoe, they operate that intersection at about half 30 seconds per cycle, taking basically 4 cycles to get all the way around. And that intersection only does about 600 cars per hour. So in any one direction, which I'm just, none of the information provided in the evaluation of the signaled intersection actually gives a flow rate. They give a detention rate, an average detention rate, but I'm not certain that that necessarily balances out to no information was provided on how that would actually accommodate the wait time. Because if you've been to Steptoe and Gauge at rush hour, you know it backs up pretty well. My comment at the last, in the May meeting, or I mean, the April meeting, was that we are allowed to have level of F service at times. And the main reason we're having such traffic is cut through traffic. The conflict of traffic returning from work to West Richland on Keene, conflicting with traffic that's following out of West Richland, assuming to have passed through West Richland and making a left turn on Keene, heading out of town, seems to be where the conflict of all this comes from. And I'm still a proponent of saying we can control that. And I believe that what was stated at the March meeting, the April
February.
2nd meeting, that if you build it, they will come. If it isn't painful to get through this intersection, people will still be using it as a shortcut rather than using the bypass. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Blue. Councilmember Moran.
Thank you. I thought you were going to go to Mayor Pro Tem Brink first. But I want to echo exactly what Councilmember Bloom is saying. He and he even went even further than I would have gone because I didn't even know about the 1,200 cars per hour for the single roundabout. I appreciate all of the effort that has been put into this by JUB, by Roscoe, by all the rest of the staff. I really appreciate you doing this, and especially talking to Ms. Mason. I thank you very much for doing that, because that was another of my huge concerns as well. Let's not speak for her. Let's ask the homeowner what they would like to do. So I definitely appreciate you doing that. But again, I am going to have to say exactly what Councilmember Bloom is saying. And did we ever get a reason as to why we didn't look at what the effects would be if we were to have just a metered single circle? Because I had thought that that was one of the questions previously, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Well, that would be limited to the 1,200 cars per hour.
Okay, gotcha.
That's the
Okay,
upper limit.
gotcha.
So
So,
it would have to be, for the numbers that we have here, what Roscoe had stated before is accurate. A single roundabout will not function with anything over 1,200 cars per hour, with no interface, no interference.
right. Okay. But I think, again, just back to what Councilmember Bloom was saying and repeating what I had said before, if you build it, they will come. People are just like water. We're going to go where the least resistance is. We're going to flood through wherever we can. And if we keep widening roads and adding more lanes, there's going to be more people going through so that they don't have to go in the side lanes that they had gone before. And I honestly am curious as to how people feel about having another giant brick wall being added to their yard, because that doesn't make for a welcoming place for people to walk. I don't want to walk along a brick wall if I'm walking in my neighborhood. I want to see yards. I want to see houses. It just makes it not as pleasant to walk if you have those brick walls there. So I think that that is something that we might in the future want to talk to just in general as to what sort of a feeling we want the city to have when we're walking through it. But that's, like I said, a different thing. For now, I am again gonna hold fast with I don't like the idea of the signal, especially with the possibility of doing the metered roundabout, single roundabout. At this point, especially after what Miss Mason said, the landowner said, I don't want to take her home from her if she doesn't want to sell it.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown?
I guess I had a question on the policy for the brick walls. I don't remember a policy on putting up brick walls on these, roadways. Now, we did down Keene, but I didn't know it was policy. And how soon do you think that we're going to actually have to start this project? That we don't have any money.
So Councilmember Brown, your municipal code requires some kind of mitigation, either landscaping or block wall along arterials. In the past, we've accepted block walls along the four-lane roadways. If we wanted to change that, just give me direction, but the residents are expecting that along Keene Road. What was the second part of your question, Gail? I'm sorry.
How soon do you think we're going to need to start this for what
Well,
you're projecting?
Well, depending on which option we choose, will dictate how long it's going to take to get through the environmental, the right of way. If you're looking at condemnation and taking somebody's property, that alone will take 2 years. And so you're probably looking at a 2 to 3 year thing just to get to the point where you've got the right of way and the design complete. If you're one of the other ones, I'd say the PE design's probably within a year. Councilman Brown, I would be hopeful that we'd be close enough this fall. I'm not exactly sure when the Council of Government will have the next federal call for projects. But I would like to be in a position where I was right away was close to being secured, design 60%, and be able to try to go after, we're looking at $3.5 million plus, $3 to $3.5 million for the construction. That's a heavy lift, to go after TIB or even locally. But I'm hoping that we have a call for projects this fall and this project would score well. But, oh, you guys put me on the spot. All I can say is if you have a project that the design and the right of way is done and all you need is construction money, it scores very well with these agencies, these grant agencies. That's how we were successful with getting 38th to do 38th Mount Adams View, and that's also how we improved Bond Range just south of this. When you're competing on a regional level, it's tough, but if you can have it ready to go, that's how we're going to get it. So it's still several years out, Gail. I would guess we're a year to design and probably a couple years to secure funding, just because of the price tag of this. It is a major improvement, whichever direction we go.
I guess, I hope that the gal there gets to live there 20 more years, but if this isn't going to be something we're going to do right away, we could do it, look at this again later.
That is an option, Councilmember Brown. We can give back the federal dollars and say we don't want to do this project. But I was asked last month if we could delay this a month to discuss it. I said absolutely. But our region is required, it's financially constrained with our federal dollars that have to be spent by September 1st, obligated, which means we've got the design done and the paperwork in to obligate the environmental done. And that's a hard deadline. So if our region doesn't obligate their funds, we could lose it as a region. So, that's an option. That's an option, but the traffic isn't going away. Growth is continuing. This is why it's been our 6-year tip for a while. We're trying to be proactive. COVID's bought us time. Otherwise, you'd probably have a lot more people complaining about that intersection, but it's not going away.
Thank you, Roscoe. Mayor Pro Tem Brink.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, this topic has generated a lot of public comment. I think the Last topic that had so much comment was probably when we were discussing retail marijuana. But regardless, Washington Department of Transportation, WashDOT, while generally favoring roundabouts, recognizes that they are not the ideal solution for every intersection. In fact, the same WashDOT page cited by several members of the public lists several factors that have to be weighed when determining the best intersection design. That includes accident history, current and projected levels of traffic, traffic patterns, types of traffic through the intersection, the cost, which can include right-of-way purchase, maintenance, and other tangible measures. Roscoe, I appreciate you providing through JUB our local collision comparison data, which was part of this evening's discussion because it shows only minor variations between signalized and double lane roundabouts in our area. I'm very concerned about the cost of construction. It's much more expensive for the double lane roundabouts. I think, as I recall, ranging from about 200,000 to nearly 700,000 more, depending on the configuration and the specific location. And the fact that our city staff and JUB recommend a signalized intersection, these are professional engineers trying to determine what is best for our city. And when we look at the costs, that 200,000 per year for the least expensive roundabout option, I mean, that is a lot of money for this city, especially if, once again, using WashDOT figures, we figure it's $10,000 a year to maintain a signalized intersection. Well, that gives us 20 years of service before breaking even on the expense. And finally, I simply can't support intersection designs which negatively, and in this case, unnecessarily impact the residents of more than 300 homes in the Lakes and Mountains subdivisions caused by the loss of East Latin Road access in certain roundabout designs. It's already difficult for traffic moving through the roundabout from the west to the south to turn east onto East Latin. With a double lane roundabout, it'd become impossible. I'm worried very much about our substantial pedestrian traffic along the north side of Keene Road. We pride ourselves on our pathways. Just yesterday afternoon in the warmer weather, I saw dozens of individuals walking or riding bikes along Keene Road. It will become very difficult for pedestrians and cyclists to navigate safely several additional lanes of traffic from a double lane roundabout. Remember, in a double lane roundabout, it's designed that traffic doesn't come to a stop. Lastly, the condemnation of Mrs. Mason's home, the southwest corner of the intersection, I cannot condone that. Why must we take the home of an elderly woman who doesn't want to leave it when a viable solution to our traffic needs exists through a signalized intersection? And I would say this, the act of government condemnation in the senior of a citizen's home or land through eminent domain must always be our last resort. And I do ask my council members to consider very carefully any plan that incorporates that course of action. You know, the bottom line is I want our city to build an intersection which best meets the needs of our citizens. When I look at the available information to me, the choice is clear, a signalized intersection. And while this decision runs counter to most citizens' comments, I look at it as my responsibility to make the best decision possible, even if it runs into public headwinds. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brink. Councilmember Smart.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, citizens of West Richland. I really appreciate the participation and all of the comments. But I'll say at the outset that my conclusion after studying this issue extensively, being on the utility committee and reading through all of the packets and information, both the first time this was presented and the second time, which I would also encourage our residents to read through, because I believe that many of the letters we received accused us of not doing an analysis or an adequate analysis. And I think that opinion may change if the packets were actually read. And so those are all available to the public. And I encourage you all to look at those because you may better understand why some of us are coming to the conclusion that we are. This is an engineering problem. I'll remind our citizens and council that pre-COVID, every afternoon on a workday, the traffic will back up on Bombing Range Road almost a mile from that roundabout intersection to the north toward Van Giesen. That is not the level of service that that our citizens expect us to provide. My initial thought for a solution to this problem, because I like roundabouts, I like being able to just zip through there on a Sunday afternoon without having to deal with a traffic light, was to ask for a signalized or metered roundabout. But as we've seen, a metered roundabout is still a roundabout. And although that may help the current situation, I believe we were told that wouldn't solve the problem long term. You have to understand the build out that they're predicting is almost twice the traffic that we currently see. So the things that I've written down that I think are important to substantiate a decision for a traffic signal are the following, and many of them repeat what Mayor Pro Tem Brink just said, but I'll state them briefly. We will, first of all, it's less expensive. That's huge. It's a lot less expensive. It's so much less expensive that, as Councilmember Brink pointed out, the savings will help pay for whatever maintenance might be needed on the signal for several years to come. It's more flexible and programmable. You can't program a roundabout. A traffic signal can be programmed to allow more traffic in one direction at certain times of the day than others. It has the capability of having sensors so that when you approach the traffic signal with no traffic conditions or low traffic conditions, it may just let you through. We see this in Richland and other places around the state all the time. And this is what I'm expecting a signalized intersection would be for us. We talked about the fact that the traffic signal can help us coordinate with future signals up and down Keene Road and maybe even additional signals that may occur on Bombing Range in the future. You can't do that with a roundabout, single or double lane. This preserves the signalized intersection, preserves the East Latin access. You cannot underestimate the importance of being able to service the 300 some odd homes that use the East Latin access. We really would be remiss to cause that to not be to make it only a right in, right out. That would not be a very good solution for a lot of people. Again, the signal will accommodate growth. The signal does not condemn the property on the southwest corner. It doesn't matter to me. It's important to note that it's an 80-year-old woman that lives there, but it could be a young couple with 3 kids as well. Either way, it's private property, and it is the last thing that a city or government should do to condemn a private property and take it for public use. This project has had significant engineering analysis to date. The study's been accomplished, and all indications from all of our professional engineers who used computerized simulation code to study the future traffic impacts all recommend that a signalized solution is the way to go. The accident rate, which was one of the first things brought up in the last set of meetings we had, turns out to be the same or lower actually for a signalized intersection locally than for the dual lane roundabouts that we see here in the Tri-Cities. I will jump to the bottom of my list and add that the other issue that's very concerning to me is that a dual lane roundabout with the shoe flies, or the what are they called, Roscoe? The ones that
I call them shoe flies. I call them shoe flies, but I know that's not the technical name.
Yeah, what's it called? Anyway, the free right-hand turns would cause our pedestrian and bicycle traffic to have to cross 5 lanes 5 lanes of traffic that don't have to stop. And we've got a major bike path. And I noticed that some of our residents were actively promoting the idea that in the future, we won't need cars, we'll all ride bikes. Well, that's great. I happen to build and design bikes myself, thank you very much. But I have no delusions that we're going to move away from automobiles anytime soon. I can't go to Costco with my bicycle. So we will have bicycle traffic for recreational use and maybe even for getting back and forth to work. And we will have walking path traffic on the nice days like today. And I don't want to make our citizens cross 5 lanes of unmetered traffic to cross that intersection. That's just if they're going straight. It's 10 lanes if they want to go make an L turn. So that just seems ridiculous to me. Also, it's important to know that our residents expect us to maintain a level of service that accommodates growth. You know, the traffic signal will give us the most flexibility in the future for programming for whatever traffic situations or traffic loads that we have coming from whichever directions that we get. The roundabouts don't have that capability. So I think that, you know, all of this analysis has been amazing. And I really appreciate all the work that's gone into it. And I guess I stick with what I had concluded the first time around, is that the traffic signal is the logical engineering solution to this problem. I don't like to stop at a stoplight any more than anybody else. I think that the idea of reducing the speed limit or normalizing it to something like 40 or 35 miles an hour is a good idea. One of the main concerns that we had that I really thought was important was this idea that an accident at an intersection can be a T-bone event, which is very dangerous and oftentimes causes a lot of injury. We didn't see, you know, that playing out in the local data, but it certainly could play out in the future. And so one of the things I advocated for the signalized section or intersection was that we look at either reducing the speed limit, approaching it, or probably better yet would be to add some indicators along the side of the road that indicate that there's a stop ahead. So there are these yellow flashing lights that can be installed. There are warning signs and other factors that can help our residents, you know, not do something stupid and try to break through an intersection without noticing that it's there. But we all deal with this every time we get in a car. So I don't think this will be any different than driving in any other location in the Tri-Cities where they have a significant enough traffic issue to where a signal has been installed. And I believe that sadly, this probably will not be our last traffic signal. It's not our first, I remember that one. And we can all look down at the corner of Bombing Range and Van Giesen and ask ourselves, what would it be like if there was a traffic circle there? Well, I don't think it would work very well, to tell you the truth, but I think the signal works quite well. So that's my 2 cents. I will, you know, I appreciate all the public input. I encourage the public to study the details like we have, and not just go with a mantra that roundabouts are the best way to go. They are a good way to go. We made that decision several years ago. It was a good way to go then. It was less expensive, but we had a much different traffic situation at that time than we have now. So I believe the time has come to embrace the future and do it as best as we can. So my vote will be to proceed with the traffic signal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to repeat everything that Councilmember Smart and Mayor Pro Tem Brink said. My points are exactly the same. However, I will add, I spoke with Chief Carlisle of Benton Fire District 4. And although he said the drivers don't mind roundabouts, they prefer traffic signals for safety of speed to get through the intersection on the way to an emergency. He said they got more control over signalized lights. They can turn them all red at one time and also coordinate them all the way down the road. So all the same points that Mayor Pro Tem Brink and Councilmember Smart said. Just want to add input from Fire Chief Carlisle.
Thank you for that insert of Carlisle's comments. Okay, council, with that, I will ask all in favor, say aye.
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 Let's go with a roll call vote, please. It's a little difficult to hear. Councilmember Fetto,
Aye.
Councilmember Smart,
Aye.
Councilmember Brink,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem, excuse me, sir.
Aye.
Councilmember Brown. You're muted.
Aye.
Councilmember Moran,
No?
Councilmember Bloom,
Nay.
and I think I've got everybody. Stephanie, your vote count?
It's 4-2 in the affirmative.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you, council. Good discussion. A lot of great citizen participation, much appreciated. Appreciate all of the individuals here this evening as well. So with that, we will go ahead and move on. We have no unfinished business this evening, nor do we have any new business. So this is the time for citizen public comment for any items that are not on the agenda this evening. If you would wish to provide comments, go ahead and raise your virtual hand and Stephanie will recognize you, unmute you, and you may make comment. If you're by phone, *9, we'll do the same. You see anyone, Stephanie?
I do not.
Okay, very good. We'll move on then to staff and council reports. Staff, if you have any comments that you'd like to make this evening, go ahead and take your turn.
I'll start off, Mayor, if that's okay.
Absolutely, sir. Go ahead.
Just want to report back to council regarding a economic outlook that I participated in with TRIDEC this last week. If you weren't able to watch that, you can go on TRIDEC's website and go on there and download or stream the Coffee with Carl. I participated with the other 3 cities in discussing what's happening. So it's a great opportunity for us to learn what our neighboring sister cities are doing, as well as understanding some of the economic situations that we're in the area. I know that, and I can never get her name right, but she works with the Washington State Employment Securities Department. She's able to provide us with some great economic outlook as far as what's happened, what she's projecting for what's coming up, and giving us some idea of what's going on there. So if you haven't had a chance yet, I would highly recommend that you go back and look at those Coffee with Carls. They do a great job at communicating out to our city and to our residents what's happening and keeping us informed.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Chief Majetic this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make it fairly short. Council may be aware, and ladies and gentlemen of the audience, these recent Supreme Court ruling made in reference to the RCW governing unlawful possession of controlled substance. And I just really want to impress upon people the major impact this ruling had on the state of Washington and public safety. The case itself that went through the Supreme Court was really a simple possession case of a illegal narcotic that the person claimed that they had no knowledge that they were in the possession. I believe it was in a jacket pocket. And the court was simply supposed to rule on whether or not that knowledge, which the defense argued was a major factor in the possession charge. And the court did find that the RCW language did lack language that specifically that addressed the person who was in possession of the narcotic knowingly was in possession, and that they need that without that language specifically in the RCW, they could not find this person guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and they could have simply overturned that conviction. But instead, they went one step further, not only overturned the conviction, they found the entire RCW unconstitutional. The impact that has as a result that every single conviction under that RCW or that statute is now vacated. Otherwise, every case ever for unlawful possession of a controlled substance either be expunged from the records, people will be released from the jails, released from the prisons, the warrants will be squashed, people in drug court will no longer have to abide by the restrictions. It's as if the law never existed. And there is no legislative fix. If the legislature did restructure the law to encompass the language that knowledge was one of the elements of the crime, that would be great from this day forward, but it still would not change the fact that all the previous convictions would still, again, be vacated, be null and void. The impacts are just incredible, not only for the prosecutor's office who have to go back through all the records over the decades to start working through this, to our current situation of the narcotic itself is illegal, but the possession is not. Our local laws, the municipal codes that govern juveniles being in possession of marijuana is no longer illegal. There's a lot of issues this creates. It's just, the magnitude is just incredible. And that's what you get when legislation comes from the bench. And that's exactly what happened in this case. And unfortunately, I thought the outrage for proposed legislation will come out of the legislature, and this looks like the courts beat them to it. And we're not done yet. But don't get me started on the legislation that has reached this point where it looks like it may come through as far as police reform. Mr. Mayor and Council, ladies and gentlemen, of the audience, I am meeting with not only Bronson Brown, but our other city attorney, his partner that prosecutes our local misdemeanor cases, Mike Reel, this Thursday, to reevaluate the municipal codes we currently have on the books, which will require some rewriting and revision as a result of this ruling. But I'm outraged. There's nothing, no way to sugarcoat it. It's just terrible case law, terrible ruling, and it's going to have repercussions on this state and public safety for years to come. And if you'd like me to talk for another hour, I will, but otherwise, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. Much appreciated. I'm sure council may have some questions in regards to that particular item when we get to their council comments or questions. Any other staff members this evening before we move on? I see no one, so I will open the floor for council members. If you'd like to raise your hand and make a comment or ask the chief of any questions. Gail, I saw your hand up earlier. I know that you might wanted to ask the chief in regards to this horrible ruling from the bench, because it certainly has a negative impact for our communities in the state for years to come, from older to the younger kids as well.
Chief, there is an onslaught of bills, and it very much seems that they're really targeting the police departments. On this, it's early. Do you think that they'll be also asking for restitution? I mean, I just can't. There's so many things in this thing that are just up there. Have you heard any rumblings about that at all, too?
If I heard you correctly, you said prostitution. Is that the case? Then no, there's no current legislation about that.
Restitution.
Chief, just a second here.
Okay, thank you.
There.
I heard tuition, and I was guessing that's the thing. So no prostitution or restitution. Nothing specific to restitution as far as crimes, but I wouldn't see that I wouldn't say that's not going to happen next legislative cycle. This one, that hasn't been proposed. Just the sheer numbers, they had to really condense things down to a number, only a few proposals to actually make the cut, and that's not one of them, thank God. And Ms. Brown, what I would like to say too is I don't want to paint this as it's going against police. I prefer to say it's impacting public safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, does it make it harder to be a cop? Well, sure it does, but that's not my concern. That's not my main concern. My concern is preventing police officers from, in my mind, and my 33 years experience going on 34, of me being able to do my job to protect my community. That's what it affects most. It's short-sighted, based on emotion, not facts, and it's going to have huge impacts. And so you can call it as anti-police legislation. To me, it's anti-public safety legislation. That's my main concern. I think that's all of our concerns.
And I agree with that. It is going to hurt our safety and your officer's safety.
Anything else, Gail? Good. Okay, perfect. Councilmember Smart.
Yeah, I had another question to follow up with, Chief. So is this regardless of quantity? Is that true still?
Yes and no. The laws as far as possession with intent to delivery is still a law. You're not allowed to deliver or sell drugs. But then again, I've been involved in enough narcotics cases where it's really subjective on how much is, a personal use. I've had cases where a guy had 20-something rocks of crack, and we charged him with possession with intent, and he managed to convince the court that, no, that's how much crack I smoke. You'd think that element of common sense would insert itself in cases such as that. But I can tell you that I don't think common sense is necessarily a phrase that's used that frequently in court. So you really can't approach it from that aspect. So you can have a lot. And you'd have to prove intent through either cash or individual packaging or other evidence besides just quantity in order to convince the court that it was with intent to deliver.
Any other items?
Yeah, I just had one other thing to mention, and that is that we had a discussion this evening about possibly taking a resident's property, and I wanted to point out that in the Constitution we have the Fifth and the 14th Amendment, right? And those both indicate, the one says, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without process of law, nor shall private property be taken for use without just compensation. So it's addressed. And the onus there is to not take private property for public use. And then the 14th Amendment indicates that nor shall any state deprive a person of person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So it's an important concept, and I'm glad that we're not having to put ourselves in the case of doing eminent domain. I would also say there are two ways to take property. One is through overtly, taking title to the property, and the other is to regulate it. And that'll be coming up in a council meeting coming up. We'll be talking about regulations, which I believe may infringe on people's property rights, and you'll hear more about that when the topic comes up. But I mentioned that in a recent subcommittee meeting, and so I just wanted to give council a heads up to go out and read those two amendments to the Constitution, so that we can have a good discussion about that in the following week. So appreciate your attention to that. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Councilmember Moran.
Yes, thank you. Chief, I'm wondering, I missed the specific case you were talking about with the Supreme Court decision. What was the name of that again? Do you know?
Blake, Blake. That was just passed last week.
Okay.
And it's been all over me. Trust me, it won't be hard to find.
Okay.
And one thing that I did not mention, in case a question does come up, people ask if this can be appealed. Well, no, it's Washington State Constitution. that it violated, and that's what the way they ruled. So the state, United States Supreme Court can't rule on a state constitutional matter. So it's done.
Okay, so this was the Washington State Supreme Court.
Yes.
Okay, I missed that part, but that makes sense. Okay. I'm also wondering if you would be interested in over the phone or Zoom or whatever, sitting down. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are about what's currently going through legislation in a non-confrontational way, because I want to see your thoughts on them.
Sure.
Do them.
And we can do that a number of ways. We can do it individually, or if council can, would like a presentation. Fortunately, WASPIC's actually tracking all these as they're going through committees and coming out of committees and approaching the vote. And slowly but surely, they're whittling down to a few. And I just recently sent the mayor, because it's going to have an impact on city and city control over law enforcement. We're down to 9 that are directly related to police reform. And I think these 9 are actually going to go through in one form or the other. WASPIC has been producing information sheets such as this that I sent to the mayor earlier, and PowerPoint presentations on a bi-weekly basis. And they are going to have impacts on city city controls. Municipalities controlling their own police agencies, a huge issue. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what side of the line you fall on, the state is implementing a lot of these measures that will insert state control over local municipalities' control of their own police department and how they function. And I think in that aspect, councils really need to be made aware of what's happening right now.
Mhm.
So either way, Mr. Brown, I'm more happy to talk to you about it. We can do it as a presentation to council, or we can do both.
Okay, I'm up for either. I would appreciate that. I would like to hear what exactly the legislation is that's going through and the reasons why. And I can also check WASPIC's page too. I'm sure that it's on their website as well.
Yes. Now the reports usually come through the membership portal, because it's a constantly evolving process right now. Legislature, they're trying to get everything shoved through. If I've got the dates correctly, I think by the 15th, before they close anything out. No, it's already too late for new legislation to be proposed. All they can do is amendments to the current proposals.
Right. Okay. And then I'm also wondering for the municipal codes that might have to be changing, are there a lot of municipal codes that are related to controlled substance possession?
We do have a little bit of a narcotic session, yeah.
Okay.
So there will be.
Okay.
And it's not going to be that difficult of a fix. It just won't necessarily be preferable, I guess.
Right.
But I'll explain all that to council when we present it and why we have to do it. Whether me or Bronson are going to present it, I don't know. We're going to work at it together in conjunction with we'll come up with some proposals for council to consider.
Okay, thank you very much. And also, Councilmember Smart, I'm really interested to see what changes you're talking about coming down the pipeline. But thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry.
Councilmember Brown?
There was a couple of things I agree that I'd love to see that as a council presentation, Chief, and if the public, if they want to listen in. We did have the Good Roads meeting, and I forgot to report on this. The Van Giesen scored second on the voting list, so it will go through on that. There was one bill, I've been trying to do the transportation in the housing bills, but there's so many. But there is one that I have been tracking, it's the 1220. And actually there was some good stuff I liked in here, but it does allow for emergency shelters in nearly every place, kind of the way it reads. And this is also in single family neighborhoods. And so I have some real problems with that. So if you just got it, you might want to kind of keep an eye on it. I think there's a place for it. I think we have to make a place for it. I don't think it needs to be in neighborhoods. The situation with them. So just to keep an eye on that. There is some good stuff. I think it would kind of force some, you put a little more teeth in and putting property and plans to low income and affordable housing, but that part I'm just not happy with. That's it.
Thanks. And to comment on Gail's before I go to Councilman Bloom, that one item that she just discussed was actually sent by AWC today, I believe it was. I got some information on it. So there's a good read on that. So I encourage everybody to pay close attention to the AWC. I'll touch more on that just briefly. So Councilman Bloom, go ahead.
Well, first off, I'll let Mr. Smart know that he could catch the bus and get over to Costco. The 110 will take you right out front. Anyway, and relative to transit, Council Member Brown had brought up a lot of questions relative to transit support of the COVID vaccinations. And I will expect that later this week I'll get more information. But the intent is to, well, first of all, for the mass vaccination site, the event command would not facilitate bus delivery there. They don't want personnel. They really want to go on a bus to put the vaccinations in and other things. But with the advent of greater distribution to various Walgreens, other drugstores, hopefully the Connect service as well as the demand service will be able to facilitate that. So for the, besides the, obviously Dial-A-Ride is one option, but even Dial-A-Ride to, I was quite surprised that when Cadillac was doing their clinic, they would only do 4 people per hour because of the limited number of places they had to store people for the 15-minute wait. So it's going to be still a challenge, but transit should be able to provide service to the transit dependents that are out there. And I just want to clarify that I'm not proposing that we take someone's home. I believe there were other options available to us than doing the actual take, and mainly to try and actually control people's preferences, so to speak. And with that, I guess I will have a good day. Oh, my picture behind me is the stargrass in the Yakima River. We will be starting to harvest this summer. I'm still thinking it would be a great ground cover to prevent weed growth, but we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do with what we pull out. But it's going to be a limited amount this summer, and we'll see what happens in the future summer. But I do think it would be a good soil amelioration, because we do have a pretty good chemical analysis of it that P&L has done on the actual stargrass itself. So
I saw those puddles in the background. I thought you were at a cemetery and those are headstones.
nope, that's the Yakima River. You could almost walk across it.
Yeah, okay, no other council members this evening? Kate, did you have one more thing?
I did, yes, sorry. I thought that we were just asking questions of the chief when we were talking, so
Oh,
I
I'm
apologize.
sorry, you didn't. I asked if there was anything else. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I do have one other thing from the chiefs before I leave. The Supreme Court decision to throw out the regulation or the state statute was a 5-4. I repeat, 5-4. there were 3 totally dissenting and 1 partially dissenting. And what he was dissenting about was declaring the statute unconstitutional. So it's important to think about that when it comes time to vote for our Supreme Court justices.
Thank you. Yeah, Kate?
Yes, I did want to mention that we had the Benton Franklin Economic Development Board and also the Benton Franklin Council of Government Board meet on the 19th, which was last Friday. We went over several things, and we did mention something that Councilmember Bloom discussed, and that was the vaccination sites. They're currently shutting, or in the process of shutting down, the mass vaccination site of the Benton Fairgrounds. They're planning on doing that sometime, at least as of the 19th. They said that it was supposed to be sometime around the end of March that they're shutting it down. They're currently doing the second vaccination for this series. However, they are having an overflow lot available for people where if they want to just hang out in the afternoon waiting to see if they can get an extra chance at a shot, they can do that. And you don't have to be, or it seems like some of those people are not on the list of those that are currently in this phase. So that is an option. But we do have 42 vaccination sites in Benton County and 9 in Franklin County that will be available. So that way, what Councilmember Bloom was talking about with the, especially seniors not being able to use the dial-a-ride and folks not being able to ride the bus to go to the fairgrounds to get the shots there, they can go to these other vaccination sites. So that's something that they've been able to make sure can happen so that they don't have to have some form of transportation other than public transportation in order to get a vaccination. Other than that, the other thing is that we're hoping to do a regional traffic count in August to just allow for more cars to be on the road prior to the regional traffic count. So I wanted to put that out there. And that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? We're all good? Okay, we'll move on to myself and I'll try to make it brief. As far as we will have a workshop March 9th. This workshop is going to now take on another agenda item. The first agenda item of that workshop, which I'll share all of the information in regards to that, is a discussion of the Horse Heaven Wind Farm proposal, which will encompass 25 miles of the Horse Heaven Hills east to west. And I forget what the amount of sites are, but it's a huge number of windmills. I will give all that, get that information to you for a quick discussion. There'll be hopefully more I'll be able to share with you after our city manager, county administrator meeting tomorrow. I'm sure councils are having that discussion yet this evening as we are to further discuss that project. Then with that, I'll ask the chief to get together with myself and staff, and we'll include you in the legislative issues regards to the conversation we had this evening with what the impacts are for the law enforcement, being that those bills you said are coming up on voting on the 15th, 16th, somewhere the third week of March. Give council opportunity to have a conversation on the 9th so they can reach out to their legislators and voice their opinion in regards to concerns that we have in our community. So Stephanie will put that on that agenda as well. And then COVID update, Councilmember Moran touched a bit on that. They were moving to second doses only. However, the traffic was down a bit, so they asked permission from the Department of Health to open up first dose slots, which they were able to do so, and ended up with 919 shots today. And the first dose trend will continue through the week with new appointments being added to the PEDMOD. So things are moving along out there. They are certainly rocking it. They will not see any Johnson & Johnson vaccine coming to this site. Number of vaccines actually available are far less than originally thought for Johnson & Johnson. So we will continue to work with the Pfizer and Moderna at our site here. And that is correct. If you fit the phasing and you haven't gotten your shots, you can roll out there 3:30-ish, show that you are in the phase. They'll put you in a hold line. And then after everything's administered, they'll start rolling you through and putting shots in arms, because they certainly don't want it to go in a wastebasket. So they're doing everything they can to make things happen out there. It's a stellar team, so we're very proud of everybody. And then again, too, as Gail mentioned, AWC action needed items are coming by way email. I do encourage everybody to participate in the AWC action needs, contact legislators, representatives, emails, phone calls, whatever it takes to make sure that we act to the best of our community. So with that, I believe that is all that I have this evening. We do have executive session this evening as per RCW 4231.10(1)(c). All three of these items fall under that RCW. Should take approximately 30 minutes for the three. So with that, we will adjourn this meeting with the public and move into the executive session. I see Gail had her hand up one more time before I roll off here. Sorry, Gail, and I missed you in the corner there. My camera's in the way.
I was just going to ask, are you going to bring in some kind of presenter or something on the windmill workshop?
No, not right now, because nobody's reached out to me, but I do have a lot of, everything that I sent.
There is a lot of information.
Yeah, there's a lot, and I'm also going to send the email string that I didn't share with you that came from Marie Mosley, City of Kennewick manager, and then Commissioner Will, what's his last name? He's a new guy I forgot him. So one commissioner. So I'll send that email string. It's a little bit more information than what I shared with you.
I don't think I sent you that stuff that Mr. Hammer sent me. So I'll send that back to you as well.
Yeah, if you shoot that to me, I'll make sure everybody else gets it as well in the packet.
All right, thanks.
Perfect, thanks. So with that, Stephanie, if you will excuse everyone from the public, and if anybody needs to take a quick pause, go ahead and stop your video and then roll back in, and we'll get right after it. It's been a long set here.